Now, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a great, fun time. We have one more reading to make here, and this has to do with the native. The native of Rohini Nakshatra. And this is someone typically with the moon there. But as we read, we're going to be reading also this author's depiction of what might happen when you have certain, for example, they often will put the Lagna, which is the ascendant lord, in Rohini and showing what that might mean. So with that being said, this is a depiction of interpretive understandings of what it would mean to have planets in Rohini, but in particular the moon, as well as the Lagna. The moon, the Lagna, and the sun can especially be seen in what we describe as the native here. But really any emphasis of this nakshatra, whatever that means for the individual. Again, Vic Takara has a great thing on his website where you can see which nakshatras are most emphasized in your chart. And in that thing, he does a report of the most emphasized nakshatra in your chart, even beyond just the moon, which is a different thing. So I recommend checking that out if you are interested in it. Now what we're looking at here is Rohini Nakshatra and a native of Rohini Nakshatra. Ruled by a nakshatra devata whose very essence is desire, Rohini imbues a powerful desire nature to its native. This is consistent with its jyotisha classification as a human, manusha, nakshatra, of the earth, Prithvi element. Although the elements I'm sketchy of. Some of the elements, the tattvas, are aligned with the nakshatras, but the elements begin their classification at Ashwini. So we have to remember, I should say this now too, is that much of what we read here is the interpretation style of this author who uses sidereal rashis and who also thinks, I believe, when I read it, she kind of she contends with the Vimshotari lord of, for example, Rohini being ruled by the moon. So might be a bit of dirtied up knowledge in here. We're going to read it and see what kind of cream we can separate from the runny milk of this author's particular interpretation. The most prolific of nakshatras, Rohini is notorious for progeny. The Rigvedic character of Daksha Prajapati and Aditi give birth to 12 sons, the Adityas. And Puranic Daksha has 60 daughters. So Daksha being Prajapati, being the deity of this nakshatra. Rohini's fecundity extends to material success and opulence. Such prosperity is most often attributable to the resourceful and self-sufficient nature of this native. When we listen to the stories of Prajapati, we learn that he never once seeks advice, assistance, or consensus when it comes time to create. He just spills that seed. Frequently, a single notable feat or extraordinary accomplishment will catapult the Rohini native into stardom, just as the sole act of creation made Prajapati the most talked about devata in the Brahmanas. Indeed, under favorable chart conditions, all things can grow and prosper for the native born in Rohini. Rohini's fertility extends to other areas as well. Having the stellar configuration of a wain, an ox cart, This nakshatra is particularly auspicious for agricultural fruitfulness. The Rohini native exhibits a keen knack for gardening and cultivation of plants. He or she may be predisposed to professions in agriscience, permaculture, horticulture, agriculture, and so on. The hallmark of the Rohini narrative is an appreciation for nature and familiarity with her cycles and rhythms. Prajalpati is famous not only for manifesting earthly vegetation, but as well for having created herded animals like horses, goats, and cows. This characteristic instills in the native a fondness for domesticated or farm animals. However, Prajalpati's greatest faculty is creative skillfulness. Remember, the other name for Prajalpati given in the Rig Veda is Daksha. And Daksha means skillfulness, expertise is really the word. Oh, I've got to stretch for a moment. Oh, that felt really good. This is likely expressed by the Rohini native through a multitude of avenues, depending upon the overall inclinations of the birth chart. This can give skills in visual arts, such as drawing, painting, handcrafts, and ceramics. It can give rise to skills in performing and fine arts, such as dance, song, theater, and drama, or in related fields of songwriting, stage crafting, costume design, and so on. Any and all forms of creative expression requiring physical agility and ingenious intellect fall under Rohini. It's cool because we can even see transits. We can see eclipses happening in Rohini. We can see new moons and full moons. Any important planet transiting Rohini will bring out these characteristics for that time. Now, several notable performers have Rohini prominent in their birth charts. One such individual is Leontine Price, who has the moon in Rohini. This person is an opera singer who achieved worldwide superstardom. Now, in the actress category is Greta Garbo, who has Jupiter in Rohini. Possessing great physical beauty, another hallmark feature of Rohini, Garbo was one of Hollywood's greatest movie stars. Now, there's Greta Garbo and Martha Graham are described as this author as having the rising sign in Rohini, but we know she's a sidereal author, so I want to give that caveat that she might have the bias of that here. But Jupiter, for these people, was in Rohini. So Martha Graham had Jupiter in Rohini, and this person, Martha Graham, acclaimed the leading exponent of modern dance. And this illustrates Rohini's creative energy expressed through dance. Now, Krishna is said to have Rohini in his Nakshatra, in his Lagna. You know, you'll have to excuse me, folks, because I've got to get my astronomy right here. It seems to me that even though the Lagna would be in a different sign, it would still be in that nakshatra. So we can say that Greta Garbo and Martha Graham have their Lagna and Jupiter in Rohini. Excuse me for messing that up. I was just thinking about the fact that we read that Krishna has a Rohini Lagna. Lagna meaning the rising sign. So we could see that Krishna, this is what's given in the Bhagavad Mahapurana. Krishna is defined as having Rohini Nakshatra on the rising sign. And Krishna is the godly embodiment of this nakshatra. Like Prajalpati's daughter, Krishna has divine physical beauty. Krishna is an expert in song, dance, and music, as well as in the art of lovemaking. Now, although arguably the most materialistic of the 27 nakshatras, Rohini is fully capable of inspiring a spiritual path. Prajalpati was especially skilled in the performance of sacrificial worship. In fact, it was Prajalpati who taught the other gods the way of the sacrifice. Thus, an appreciation and adeptness for spiritual knowledge and sacerdotal rituals may flourish under this nakshatra. Still, life for the Rohini native is not always all that it's cracked up to be, especially when it comes to familial relationships. One can imagine the reality show The First Cosmic Family, starring Puranic duo Brahma and son Daksha as figureheads for the most dysfunctional family in the history of the gods. Their dysfunction is understandable, since no previous domestic role model existed. If Rohini is unafflicted, then novel or unique family dynamics are substituted for dysfunctional. For examples of this include, I can see what this is saying here. Well, I'm going to say this, and I think what this is saying here is that if Rohini is unafflicted, then we might find novel or unique family dynamics. I am reading this correctly. So the author is not necessarily saying, at all that this is necessarily dysfunctional, but someone with an emphasis of Rohini can experience unique, novel, different from typical sexual procreation in terms of the roots of your family. Such as, for example, she gives the example of a gay couple who employ a surrogate or an in vitro fertilization to give birth to quadruplets. That is not the typical male husband, female wife coming together and having children. But if Rohini is unafflicted, these kind of things can happen, and the person can still be a person who exists just like everybody else. And especially if Rohini is well placed, then even a strange family dynamic like this can give birth to some beautiful people. Now, although this nakshatra is immensely favorable for progeny, we note that Puranic Brahma, what we read about Brahma in the Puranas, is that he faces many obstacles when it comes to children. We recall Brahma's rage when his mind-born son, Daksha, rejects Brahma's fatherly guidance, and they refuse to procreate. So Brahma has these children, and they refuse to listen to his orders. And this enrages him. We also have the character of Sandhya and her act of defiance when, spurning her father's love, she surrenders her life to the fire. That's one of the stories that we would read in the section of Prajalpati. Sandhya is the daughter of Daksha, who gets frustrated because of Daksha and Brahma's weird ways, and she spurns his love and burns herself up in a fire. Familial difficulties extend to the broader family unit, where infighting, jealousy, envy, and deception may be the norm for the family of one who has significant placements in Rohini. On the other hand, kudos is in order for this native's readiness to go to the ends of the earth, to assist family and friends, just as Prajapati forsook his own immortality for the benefit of humanity. So there is an ability in this nakshatra to sacrifice, to make all the ends meet, and to resolve any issues that occur. Imbuing a powerful libido, Rohini may cause difficulty in relationships. This theme is consistent throughout the Vedic and Puranic literature. If gravely afflicted in Rohini, then we might see inappropriate, brash, or reckless sexual behavior. The perpetual need to satiate physical urges, even familial incest, can be part and parcel for this nakshatra. We recall that Brahma distorts his own physicality, i.e., he grows 4 additional heads and, on another occasion, transforms himself into a stag. And he does these things in order to satisfy his lustful nature. So indeed, the Rohini native, when afflicted, is likely to be indulgent when it comes to life's physical pleasures, even transforming themselves, doing things they wouldn't normally do, just to gratify these physical pleasures. Now we read that Brahma's love of shenanigans invites public dismay and may bring grave repercussions, including physical injury. Brahma, after all, is pierced by Rudra's arrow and later loses one of his 5 heads due to this behavior of his. Similarly, indiscreet or improper behavior by the Rohini native is unlikely to escape the notice of others and may result in injury to the native. All sorts of perversions of all sorts can happen through this nakshatra. This nakshatra is a good example of why we need to practice forgiveness, but still apply just judgment to people who do things of a sexually perverted nature. We don't need to completely drop a person off the face of the earth or, not forgive them, not allow them to have the space of forgiveness. But we do need to give justice for someone who's, for example, who does some kind of like incestuous, like a peeping Tom that looks through the window at people and wants to masturbate while watching people do their regular things, or someone who's like a pedophile, or these kinds of people who do these sexually perverse behaviors. We need to set an example so that such people are not allowed to continue such behavior. But, ideally, we want to, through stories like this, we can understand and sympathize why these characters come through with these kind of natures. And, at least we can have compassion for them while still deliberating what needs to be deliberated in terms of judgment towards things that they've done or that they do. So the Vedic world encapsulates all possible things that could ever possibly happen, even weird, shadowy stuff like what we're reading right now. Better to talk about it and be aware of these things than to not talk about it and for it to be a shadow. I think that's what I'm picking up from today's discussion. So ultimately, those who engage in this kind of perverse sexual things and physical gratification at the expense of others will probably get some kind of just desserts for those things that they're doing if there is afflictions to Rohini. Now, finally, mention should be made of Brahma's own self-appreciation. Creating the universe is more than just an admirable, but Brahma-centric attitude does bring trouble. Rarely does rarely in the Puranas does Prajalpati accept any devata as his equal, even co-triad partners Shiva and Vishnu. His elitist attitude results in his own demise. So hence, under unfavorable chart conditions, the larger-than-life Rohini ego may cause problems for the native as well. And this is something that the character of Rohini needs to take care of in going about what they do with themselves and with their lives.